Now, Red's new Japanese CEO, the new guy who was appointed as Red's CEO, apparently he was taking care of Z8 and Z9's firmware division. Now he is the CEO of Red Cinema Cameras, and he has indicated that they're planning to introduce a Z mount to the Red cameras in future, which is very interesting because if that happens, they're not saying that they're going to withdraw the Canon RF mount, which is what the Red cameras use currently. Now, it's interesting because Red said they're not going to disturb the scenario, they're not going to disturb the current ecosystem and the entire sort of, system that Red have built up for themselves. They're not going to disturb that. I think they're definitely looking for a smooth transition period, and they're going to have a period where Red and Canon will both coexist. So at that point, Nikon will work with Red and Canon will work with Red. Canon will work with Nikon. So these three companies will work together to support the RF mount on the Red bodies. And it's surely going to be a period of 3 to 5 years. I mean, Red is not going to suddenly drop the RF mount. It's going to be a gradual process if it ever happens. There is a possibility that it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. But it is now clear that the Nikon mount is going to be introduced to the Red cameras. That is very exciting because it gives Nikon a lot of reasons to actually look at cinema cameras, making cinema cameras. And Nikon have said as much. Nikon have said that they are in another leak. They have said that, I think it was an interview where they have said that they're actually working on bringing in the Nikon optics in a cine sort of lens body. Clearly that's going to be made for the Z mount, and that's going to be made keeping in mind the Red bodies. So that's, again, you can see how things are sort of all being put in place, right? Things are sort of coming together. So Nikon is planning to make cinema cameras using the fantastic optical design, and that's going to benefit the normal users of any Z camera, right? Even if you have a APS-C body or you have a full frame body, no matter what Nikon camera you have, the moment Nikon starts to make cine lenses, you're going to have native cine lenses, for your camera. Even if you have a photography camera or a hybrid camera like a Z9 or a Z8, which is fantastic. Even the ZF can do really good video. Now, what is surprising to me is that we haven't heard anything from Canon yet. Not at all. Nothing. We have heard nothing from Canon. And it's very interesting because as technology changes, as software stack changes in the background, the lens and the body will have to talk to each other, right? So Red has a different software. Going forward, Nikon is going to introduce then own systems into the Red's systems as well. So the new softwares will have to talk to the Canon RF mount lenses, which means Canon is definitely in talks with them, because for Canon, it's a market. It's whoever uses a Red camera and owns a few RF lenses is a potential customer. And since Red is not going to drop the RF mount, it remains a significant and interesting customer base, potential customer base for Canon. So purely out of business interest, it makes sense for Canon to be in touch with these guys and then work together for this. The other thing that I find very interesting in this whole thing is that we have adapters for old Leica lenses for Z mount, old Nikon lenses for Z mount. Now we have the EF lens mount adapter for Z mount as well. I have the Sony 2 Z mount, E2 Z mount adapter by Megadap, the E2 Z21. So, and understand these lenses can be adapted because Nikon has the shallowest flange distance. What is a flange distance? The point I'm building up to is that we still don't see an RF to Z mount adapter. And I'll tell you why that's the most natural thing to do. You see, the distance between the lens or the rear element of the lens and the sensor is the flange distance. Okay, very simply put. These Z mount lenses are built to resolve the entire light of the image onto the sensor plane, and therefore all the Z mount lenses are designed to focus on the Nikon Z sensor plane, which is about 16 millimeters away. Right now for Sony it is 18 millimeters. So all the Sony lenses are designed to focus on a sensor plane which is 18 millimeters away from the lens element, the rear or the back element of the lens. For Canon it's 20 millimeters. So if you look at the Sony E2Z adapter, the Sony to Nikon adapter, you will see that that adapter is about 2 millimeters thin, because the difference between the Z mount is flange distance and Sony flange distance is 18 minus 16, that's 2 millimeters. For Canon, it's 20 millimeters. The flange distance between the back element of the lens and the sensor is 20 millimeters. So you can actually build a thicker and a stronger 4 millimeters thick adapter for RF to Z mount, but we haven't seen that. And I think RF mount has quite a few interesting lenses. I don't ever feel the need for those very expensive 1.2 Canon lenses or not so great 1.8 lenses from Canon, but these are 16 millimeters 2.8 wide angle prime lens. That's very tiny, good to focus with. I think that's a very interesting lens that I would like to try from the RF mount on the Nikon system. I'd also like to see something like the 28-70 f2. So there are a few long lenses that are interesting from Canon as well. I mean, a Sony user might want to adapt a Canon lens to the Sony mount cameras. Same for Nikon. And that to me is another opportunity for Nikon, Canon and Red to come together, because we already have the EF to Z mount adapter, and I see how that's going to be used by current Z8, Z9 users, ZF users, the future Z6III users. But I also see how that can be used by the Red users on a Nikon Z mount Red camera, but if they have a bunch of sort of EF lenses which they are currently using by adapting on the RF mount Red bodies, they might want to actually keep the lenses and upgrade the body to a body of that current time. It all makes sense, and that's something that I'd like to see, and we're not seeing anyone work on that. Primarily, I think because Canon is such a closed system, they've opened up apparently Sigma, but I don't think anyone, the likes of Megadap and all these guys or Viltrox who make these adapters, I don't know if they have the rights to actually work with the RF mount. And I think it's time for Canon to slightly open up. They can see what's happening. The world is changing. Collaboration is the name of the game. A closed ecosystem works when there is no requirement for interoperability, but I think in the camera and video and digital arts, digital contents world, I think it makes complete sense to integrate and closely collaborate as much as possible. I think it's only the Canon users who are losing out, and Canon who's losing out here. They also recently opened up their mount with APS-C and some basic lenses that Sigma is going to make for Canon. Maybe the R10, R7 users, you have reasons to be happy. But then that's not really significant, because you have a really decent R8 at I think what, $1,200, $1,300 which a lot of people or a lot of users of the R8 will actually want to use that camera with third-party cheap affordable lenses. Not happening. So the reasons for Canon to actually collaborate with other lens manufacturers, adapter manufacturers, and thereby to work with Sony and Nikon wherever possible makes sense, not only for the affordable line of cameras but also for the more expensive line of cameras. I really do think that a lot of Sony users might want to have an RF to E mount adapter, which can again be 2 millimeters thin, exactly like the E to Z adapter, and they should work well together, because I know already that a lot of Sony users are also Canon users, and very few Nikon users are Canon users. Very few Nikon users are also Sony users. But I have seen a lot of people, actually a lot of Nikon users are Fuji users, but very few people use Nikon and Sony together, or Sony or Canon or Nikon together. But there are a lot of Sony users who are Canon and vice versa. Canon users and vice versa. So I think it makes sense for Canon to really help these adapter makers to make their lenses more adaptable for the other mirrorless mounts, and that's going to be an exciting future if that happens. Nikon is clearly showing openness to and consideration to continue with the RF mount and to keep supporting the RF mount on Z mount cameras. And then they're saying that instead of replacing, that's the point, right? They're saying instead of replacing the RF mount, we're just going to add the Z mount to the mix. And you may pick up the Z mount red camera or the RF mount red camera, depending on what you want. And that offering that choice is, I think, friendly to the consumer, and that's pro consumer, and that's what I like, and that's what I admire Nikon for. I mean, throughout, I mean, I've been using Nikon for I think 8 years now, and my experience with this brand has been they're extremely customer friendly, and they understand that people may have legacy gear, and the support for F mount lenses has been terrific on the Z mount. Yes, a lot of D glass lenses, bit difficult to use, but I think those are even an earlier version of lenses. They can be used as a manual lenses, not as autofocus lenses. Apart from that single instance where Nikon, we haven't seen Nikon do more work on. Apart from that, I see Nikon being collaborative, honestly, across brands. I mean, they were the one of the early brands to actually show full support to Viltrox, and now Viltrox are making fantastic lenses really for all mounts, and it's amazing what Viltrox is doing right now. I have quite a few Fuji Viltrox lenses, and their upcoming full frame 135 and all those lenses are very exciting. They're also working on 1.2 lenses. Very exciting times for third-party manufacturers, even the ones that are cheaper than the likes of Sigma and Tamron. Now, about the Z6III. Unfortunately, we're hearing from Nikon rumors that it's going to be delayed further. Of course, it's not a nice news. They're saying that it may be even end of June when you start hearing about the Z6III, when you get an announcement. And from announcement to for the camera to hit the market, it's going to be at least a month. So are we looking at an August timeline? I don't know. I mean, if it is like that, of course it's not. I mean, people are waiting, and many of them are tired. It's at this point, the Z6II is about 3.5 years old. I think it's too early for Nikon to give discounts for the Z8. I think it's too late for Nikon to not release the Z6III. I think that's the one criticism that I have. I think I don't think Z8 should be discounted, and I don't think the Z6III shouldn't be here already. Apparently, Tom Hogan has said that Nikon don't have the camera ready because there is parts supply issue. I don't know why, because all over the world there is an increase in price of the NAND chips and therefore the SSD storage devices. But apart from that, we haven't heard. Of course, apparently the artillery shells are running out of stock everywhere in the world, because thanks to Israel and Russia and Ukraine. But other than that, we're not hearing supply shortage on any other front. So I don't really understand why Tom Hogan is saying that. But if he's saying that, he probably has some information on that, because apparently he has spoken with top 3 camera manufacturers. So it could be Sony, Nikon and Canon. And if he's saying that there's part supply issue, it could be, it need not be storage, or it need not be chips. It could be something else. But if that's an issue, then Nikon is probably waiting for a time when they feel confident about the kind of stock they have. They probably don't want to launch the camera and then not be able to satisfy the demand in the market. So it's good. At the same time, well, the waiting time is probably not desirable. I'm going to see you soon with another video. If you like this conversation, please do like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to see you soon with more interesting stuff very quickly in the next couple of days. See you.